All right, so we are going to go through Firebase's Angular tutorial. There's actually a couple of different things they have here. So I think this is going to actually make things make more sense for us, I think. So here's the Angularfire quick start down here, which is pretty similar to what we were just messing with. But we're going to go through their specific tutorial that should get us up and running with something. And we're going to do a page living locally on our machine to try to talk to this first. Okay, so we're going to create a simple HTML page, and here's the couple of script tags. So I'm going to steal this HTML here, and we're going to go into our, just going to create a new file in here. And we're going to save this file. I'm going to actually put this on the desktop for right now. It's not going to be part of our project. We're just going to be testing a local website talking to Firebase using Angular. All right, so we're going to call this guy test.html. How about FB test, Firebase test? Okay, so that's that guy. I'm going to go ahead and paste that HTML in there. And then we'll throw those extra couple of script tags that they had. These two dudes. Oh, hold on. Oh, no, we're good. I thought it double pasted. It's just the... All right, so here's our Angular library that we messed with last time. Here's the Firebase library, and then there's this thing called Angularfire. That is Firebase's specific library for talking to Firebase with Angular. All right, so we have those dudes, and just as I glance forward, I think we were talking over break that we thought we might not need a node server, but as I glance forward, it looks like we do. So we'll go down the rabbit hole and see how this works out. All right, so we have Angularfire installed. Here, I'll just so we can have it open, I'll go ahead and open that file real quick. That's on the desktop, FB test. All right, so there's that guy. It's grabbing some Ajax stuff, so he's loaded. He doesn't do anything yet, but he's loaded currently. Okay, so let's go back to this tutorial. So we have Angularfire installed. Make sure, what? Oh, it wants me to paste that crap in there. I get it. Okay, so now we want to start grabbing stuff from our Firebase. So we're going to add a module definition down here inside of our script. Who? I started off in, I started off right here. I did Firebase Angular, which took me to Angularfire Quick Start. And then from within there, I click Try Tutorial. You with me now? Yep. Okay. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and add this line in here. So inside of the, did they give me a body tag? Yep, they did. So inside of my body tag here, I'm going to go ahead and do a script, and then this is what we're going to put in here. Pretty similar to what we did before, but I think we're going to see this has to connect to Node. At least I believe it does. All right, so this part of this tutorial, they want us copying this crap, it looks like. So we'll just do that. All right, so we did that. All right, so now we're going to accessing data from any controller is the simplest, injecting the Firebase object or Firebase array services. All right, so we're going to go ahead and add our controller down here with my app. So that's going to be this thing right here. We'll paste it right here, just to make the tutorial happy, and then I'll do it in my code as well. And I'm gonna just indenting stuff for my own analness, I guess. Okay. So we created our controller. So this is going to be the guy that controls our connection to Firebase. All right. Okay, so now binding an Angular model to a Firebase location is as simple as invoking the Firebase array service with the right Firebase reference. So that's this guy right here. They want us to do it right here. And I'll put it in my code over here as well. Except it looks like they have their reference and this messages thing here. All right, so reference is going to this Firebase thing. Let's go ahead and replace it, just for the sake of argument here, with our own. I'll keep it working with the stuff thing. Actually, let's leave it alone for right now, because I bet you they have a sample database that they're going to have us hit. All right, but this is what we were doing in Node before. So this is the Firebase thing, and then they are setting scope messages equal to Firebase array at bucket ref. That's our reference right there. All right, so we did that. So this is binding our Angular model to a Firebase location. So this takes our front end. So we can think of a model as like a table in our database, and we're binding it to a table in Firebase. So this is Angular gluing those two things together. Coupling, that's true. It is coupling. Okay, so now you've bound the data stored at this location, which is the top level location, to the scope messages. Perfect. So we'll say go ahead. All right. So Angular will automatically update the model as needed. Once you've bound a Firebase URL to a model via Firebase object or Firebase array, you can use your model as normally would in a regular Angular app. Now your model will also update whenever data changes in Firebase. This code iterates over the messages on the server using ng-repeat, that's Angular repeat, and displays them in an unordered list. Copy it to your controller to complete this step. All right. Steal this here real quick. Okay, so now our body is our thing called my controller. Let's see. We're going to repeat something. So message in messages, where messages Where do we say the? Oh, here's messages. This is who it's from, and then this is the body itself. So really, these guys would probably go on one line like this. Then we'll end the unordered list. I'll indent this again. And then we start our script down there. All right, so this script actually connects Angular to our Firebase endpoint here. Our body, which is going to be our Angular controller called myController. This probably isn't really necessary, but whatever. It's probably something that comes with, do they have a, yeah, here's the example CSS. So that's that guy. And we don't even have any of that. So resource tutorials. So we probably don't even want to have any of these example things, but whatever. Okay, so we're going to go through every message that's in messages. And that guy's linked to our actual Firebase array. And we're going to have a list item in an unordered list where the first element is kind of bold, who the message was from, and the second element will be the body of the message. So this is kind of like a chat thing. Okay. Okay, so we can now show stuff from Firebase. Okay, so before we do anything else, let's go ahead and reload our page. All right, so that's his message from and message body, but that should have filled in with some stuff, unless that's the default. I'm going to take the style sheet stuff out. I think that part's fine. Just try that again here. Okay, well, it's possible there's nothing in there.
Message body and message from, you have to enter in.
What do you mean? Shouldn't have to. This repeats message and messages, so each time through, MSG is this guy in our list of messages, which came from this guy. So these should be actually things from our database. I don't think we have to enter them.
When you run it, you have to enter in a username and then your message.
Oh, right, for adding stuff to the database.
Yeah.
So I'm doing an initial query of the database.
It should say Andrew, and then his body should be Firebase is the greatest, and then it should show.
That's what it should show right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so yours is showing that?
Yeah. I didn't see anything distinguishably different from yours.
Did you leave the whatchamacallit stuff in there?
Strong clash, yeah. I just copy pasted everything.
Let's just copy. Let's go back to 5 here. Oh, we don't have like the Angular thing set up for my app up here.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. We'll just repaste all that. And then our markup is going to go right here. That's this part right here. What's the thing to make this, to reformat it? Yeah, like to reindent and stuff. Selection. Isn't it like beautify or something like that?
No, I use Atom now. I got tired of the,
The thing popping up saying, do you want to buy this?
they got a nice little neat folder structure on the left side. So they like brackets.
Oh, whatever. All right, so we'll go here. Save that. All right, there we go. All right, so never gonna let me down. Rick rolled. All right. So now we'll go ahead and write something. So we added that guy. Well, I guess I didn't add it to his. Actually, will let me just jump. Okay. So now we'll go ahead and add some messages. That's in this one down here. No, I know. I'm looking at the. Here's the function. So we need to grab all of this.
You just type it in and then click the next. It'll come up and have all of the stuff that you have to.
Oh, I gotcha. Or just not type it in and do the same thing. Okay. And then we'll just walk through it in the code. Okay. So this is the chat demo. So up top here, we have a toolbar. We have an input method. This is an Angular model called name, type text. Placeholders, enter a username. Example messages, example chat. So this is going to go through all the current chat messages. Then footer will have another model for adding a message. So ng model message, key down, add message, calling the event. That's going to be this guy later on. It's type text. Say type a message. Here's our add message function right here. That's this guy. And what happens? Listen for the recurrent return key. So as we're typing stuff, it's just going to keep ignoring it. So if the key we entered was was 13 and where's message come from? It's from our scope. Oh, here it is. We're filling it in here. So if this is true, then we'll go ahead and set var name, scope name, or anonymous. So the message we've been typing, it gets stored inside of the local scope, so it's remembering it locally. Our name is what we would have entered up here at the top when we first entered something in as our chat name. So here's the username. model is name. So we'll have a variable inside of our scope called name. Similarly, we have a variable inside of our scope called message. That's where that guy comes from. So that's the current value inside that text box is our message. So they automatically get bound to our scope variable. So we'll set name equal to either the scope's name if it existed, or if they never typed anything in, we'll just set it to anonymous. Then we're going to add the message. So we'll say scope messages add. And what are we going to add? Here's some JSON. So from whoever the name was, body is the message. So that'll add it. And because of what we did up top here, this code right here is bound to Firebase. So that is this line right here. So we use this Firebase reference, and then we bind this array of messages, if you will, that we're marrying to our scope. Okay, so we create a new variable in our scope called messages, and it's going to be bound to a Firebase array ref. So that links our Angular app to Firebase from this point forward. So now no longer are we talking to Firebase directly, we're just doing Angular stuff, and Angular automatically is linking this to Firebase. So this is kind of a specialty array. So messages isn't the normal plain Jane array of values, it's a Firebase array of values, which knows how to talk to Firebase. All right, so this is how we'll add something. So we're going to take our messages, we're going to add something to our messages. What are we adding? This JSON value, and it will just magically get stored in Firebase. And then we'll go ahead and zero the message out so that next time around we can type something else in. And that should, because message here, this model is bound to this text box. When we zero it out, that text box should clear. And then we should see the placeholder text again that says type in a message. All right, so the idea here is that this should have a nice little chat server. Okay, so we'll put a username in here, Mike. So that username Mike, this is now bound to our Angular model called name. Then we'll type in a message, hello, and it's waiting for me. So it's collecting this stuff inside of that variable called message. As soon as I press enter, it says who this was from, and it zeroes out message. So as soon as I set it equal to the empty string, it goes ahead and makes this guy ring true. So whatever that internal model is, this guy shows the same thing. So we have really 3 different layers that are all linked, right? With the kind of our Firebase, I guess, Angular sandwich. We have 2 text boxes. This text box is bound to an Angular variable named name. This text box is bound to an Angular variable named message, MSG. Okay, no matter, so anything I change here, if I change this to Dave, and then I say woot, now Dave is typing in woot. So those 2 are bound together. It has nothing to do with Firebase. But if I assume, if I just refresh this page, actually if we go back to the, I don't know if I can go back to the previous one. And what's interesting here is, shouldn't I see your... Why?
Because each one, that right there is unique for the tutorial.
Oh. So if you typed in this, I got you. The tutorial generates it. Gotcha. So if we all typed in this exact same thing for our, we would all be talking to each other, right? Is that not? Do you really want that? Well, but the idea is that's kind of the nice thing about, well, let's actually think about that. So as it's currently written, so I assume a couple of you guys are doing this. You both have the same. No. Okay. So here's the issue. Keep it clean and update your code to be that one. Because what should happen now is we should be all chatting in the same room, but when I type something, it's going to update on my screen, but I don't think. Actually, maybe it will. In our controller here, actually, here's our repeat right here. And this guy is happening inside. Okay, so this is a ng repeat, message and messages. So the question will be, does this guy automatically get called from Firebase whenever there was a change? All right, so are you... Funny, Largen isn't even here. All right, so if I do that, did you guys see it? Yeah. Okay, so it is binding to you just saw the LOL? Okay. So that means that our model here messages, which is bound, so this is two-way binding. So scope messages is bound to Firebase, which means whenever Firebase updates, it's coming back and changing messages, which then is telling this guy to go ahead and repeat and update any changes in messages. It also goes the other direction, where whenever we change something in messages, like we did down here, scope messages add, Firebase updates automatically, which then pushes out to all of you that it's been updated. Make sense? So this pretty much is exactly what we want for our snow removal stuff. Is when if I'm a person who just requested requested some snow removal, I want it to show up on everybody's screen, right? So that's exactly how it should work. So that's good. Okay. So that's it for, oh, and then we can actually look at the guy there. Okay, so now let's connect this to our, let's connect it to our database and make some changes to this. So we'll come in here, we're going to connect to this guy. All right, so that'll be related to stuff. And here's our scope stuff. All right, and we're going to get rid of this add message stuff for right now, just to keep this fairly streamlined. This closes this. Okay, so that's that. No longer need that. Don't need this either. We're going to repeat let's see, we called it stuff, so item in stuff. And then we're going to say item.author and item.title. Okay, and we don't need that. Stuff example. All right, so this is our app. Here's our controller. Down here, we're having our, we're using our Angular module to link our app, this whole thing, to Firebase. Then we're going to use our app to link the controller, my controller, which is this guy right here, given a scope and giving a Firebase array. Here's function, scope, Firebase array, and this allows us to link those two things together. All right, so if I run this right now, we should see the contents of our authors and titles. All right. So that is us talking to that. Now let's go ahead and let's change something in our Firebase here. Go to data. Let's just change this to Greg. And then the thought would be that this is auto-updated. And it did. Okay. Kind of exactly what we want, right? So what do you think? So just pausing for a second here. What's our impression of, and keep in mind, everything we just did there has nothing to do with Node. Node was not required in that. So with that in mind, are we even going to need? Will you even need a server?
Probably depends on if you feel comfortable writing everything in like Angular. That's pretty much how you have to write everything, right? Rather than serving it via those endpoints.
Well, what do you mean feel comfortable?
Well, because nothing, you don't necessarily need the server to go fetch stuff for you. I mean, the iOS interface, that's going to be perfectly fine to implement whatever, and that can talk directly to Firebase.
Just as Angular can. So
just as Angular can.
Yeah.
And then you can have Angular as the web interface and talk directly to the database without having Node serve you any pages.
So can we come up with a reason why we do need Node here?
You definitely don't need it. It's just a matter of which, I guess, style of serving it you would prefer for the website of the app.
Because if we didn't have to use Node, if we could pull everything off that we need with just Angular, then we could use Firebase to host. Because Firebase is just hosting static HTML pages. Well, this is a static HTML page we're looking at right here, fbtest.html. That could be hosted on Firebase. And then when you launch it off your Firebase URL, it's talking to Firebase, but it's talking to it from your local machine. And if I do a view page source, yeah, so this could be where things get into trouble. So we're pretty clearly showing them the nature of our data if you do this on the client side like this. So probably the next thing to explore is authentication and see if their authentication model indicates that this makes sense. I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily a problem. I guess you're gonna have to send it from the web page to Node anyways. Well, so let's look at authentication. Firebase, Angular, Authentication. User Authentication, Firebase. Okay. So we can let Firebase manage everything for us. We can also authenticate through Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, or Google. Okay. Okay, what about I want to register a user? I guess let's just look at their code here. Okay, so this is using Firebase Auth. So that's going to be our controller. So let's paste that in there. And this is called my controller, not sample controller. And we'll take scope Firebase Auth. Same thing as we had before, except now this guy's getting, actually there's no difference in what he's getting, we just called it Firebase Auth. This is the same thing as we had before when it was just Firebase. Okay. And then logging a user in. Alright, so we're adding a function. Opens there, closes. So here's our login function. We'll walk through this in a second. Alright, so login function is a function that takes in no parameters. We set our auth data to null, we set our error to null, then we call auth, which is this guy right here, an instance of Firebase authentication given our reference, and our reference is going to be off of our off of that guy. Probably. Okay. So we'll auth anonymously. Then okay, so this actually isn't passing any username and password. This is just anonymously authenticating. Well, at least it'll give us a sample. Then we'll get our auth data. Whatever. Okay. Okay. Oh, and then you can right, but you could do it for Facebook and stuff too. Okay. Except this is Node.js code. Oh, no, you could use it right here. So we also want to have a thing to generate users, to register a user. So we can create our that's logging in users, that's creating a user account. All right, so we need a right, yeah. Is there a way for us to turn off because right now we're anonymously authenticating. This is our controller, but we're never actually calling upon that. Go back to where I was. That's it's creating. Okay, yeah, this is where we were. So this is logging in a okay, and then here's our just paste that in there. Obviously, we don't need that then, since we're doing it in the div. All right, so we have a button that says login anonymously. When we click that, it's calling our login function. So that's Angular click, which calls this guy down here, which authenticates anonymously using Firebase's magic. If auth data, so auth data started off as null, but it should get set to something legit in here if they did authenticate. So if it's something, we'll say logged in user, and it gives us the auth data UID. Otherwise, it'll give us an error, blah, blah, blah. So barring anything weird happening, this should just work. And this will be, so there's our login anonymously. Click that. Kind of expected something to pop up by now. There's our button. It's calling login. This is my controller. This is my controller. I don't think we had to leave the my controller thing up there. If that's the case, we could take it out of here. Here's login. Takes no parameters. It's our button. If auth data, this guy, then we're going to say logged in user. Why are we not getting any message? Oh, because this should be my app. I copied and pasted code from two separate things. Oh, good. Anonymous authentication is currently disabled, so we should be able to see it get enabled. Go in here. So here, anonymous. So if I turn this on, now I should be able to do this again and it should work. There we go. Worked. Turn it back off. No longer allowed them to anonymously. Perfect. Okay, good. So we can't anonymously authenticate. So now let's go and let's create a user account. Actually, I could probably do it through here anyways. We could probably create an account in here. Okay. So, and I assume this will also show registered users. So let's go ahead and let's create one using the code that they showed us here. So let's go ahead and give ourselves a couple of text boxes to read some stuff in. Well, we'll have this just created first. So I'm going to do a scope.register. This guy's going to be a function that takes in it's going to be bound to those things up there. We don't need to call it right now. So let's see. So it's going to be like that. That, paste that stuff in, and we actually already have our ref, so we don't need that guy. And we'll just create this specific user. So this was that function. This is that guy. Do we really not have a way to auto indent on this? I thought there was a... Alright, so that's our register function. So now we can just give them a second button up here. This guy will call in our register function. And I assume, whatever. So now when I click this, the magic should have just happened because I'm not spitting anything out. There's our new user that's been registered. Okay. What happens if we try to register the same user twice? Yeah, I'm not printing an error, so I assume it just didn't work. Yeah, let's just spit back out an error. Okay, so now let's link these to a couple of text boxes, similar to what we did in the previous tutorial. Angular text boxes. I could just go back to the tutorial, but I was trying to grab it from another place. All right. Piece of this div. All right, this is username. And then here's our input for it. This will be username. And then same thing for our password. This is going to be type password. I wonder what this ID thing is here. Don't want to have a placeholder for password. I don't think this ID is useful. This guy right here, ID is equal to username, because we're already binding it to our model here. So that's what binds it to the variable name. I don't know what this guy does. should be able to do a BR/ here. So now we should be able to hit register. We should be able to say scope username. And scope password. Okay. Save that. Do this. Alright, so let's do Mike at awesome. Password, click register. Probably should have emptied those out, but we didn't. Go into one of these guys. Refresh. Okay. So that worked. Still don't know what that ID is for, though. See, historically, if we were doing normal web forms, ID would be the name of the username, or be the variable name. But we don't have that here since our variable name is coming from the model. So with that, I don't think this is even a thing. I don't think it hurt anything. And what we should be able to do down here then is after we should be able to say scope.username is equal to the empty string and scope.password is equal to the empty string. Run this again. No. Yep. So then why didn't it empty out? Maybe that's the answer to our question. ID is equal to username. ID is equal to password. Run this again. It's in the console. So if I was looking at the JavaScript console, we'd see it. That's where it outputs. Locked out. So, yeah, we're still cooking. You let yours out early? They were begging me to go an extra hour.
Sorry for interrupting, by the way. Sorry, but not sorry. A very effective tool to force your students to like our Facebook go.
That's part of their homework assignment.
Yes.
I can make that happen.
Yeah, we have an event coming up Wednesday, 4:30 to 5:30.
Shouldn't you have signs up all over the place?
Yes, I do have signs up all over the place. The little maze runner.
Well, they're not in this place.
This is my first time ever coming in this classroom. So if I can post one on your forehead, I definitely would. But
Well, from now on, you should probably just deliver my chair down here.
excuse
I had to bring this one out of my office.
me, that's your fault. I am not your servant.
Well, not always.
No. I am not the help. It's crazy.
All right. So let's see why. So did we decide why this isn't emptying? Because it definitely created the account, right? Well, I mean, I guess we're assuming it created the account.
Well, it did. It popped up on the.
Right, but I mean, we're not positive it got in here. So it's entirely possible.
Can you do it right after that create user?
That is where I'm doing it. Let's see. Well, they had an example here where they, yeah, here's scope message. Yeah, here's ng model scope, or I'm sorry, message. But it was associated with a add message function. And it was inside the add message function that it was able to set the message. So it had a scope. Well, except scope here is the scope from up here. Oh, I know what this username and password are for now. It's for this guy. For that label to be linked to that text field for the username. This username maps to this username. This password maps to this password. Because the model is something else. That still doesn't answer the question. Because we certainly could get the scope and the password, or the username and the password here. And then this guy would get called on completion. And that's the same thing as they did over here, right? Scope.message is equal to that. I mean, it doesn't, it's just inside of this if. Anything special about message? It's an NG model. My app, my controller. Just seeing if they like bound it or something that we didn't remember. Here's message in messages. And then here's our NG model for message. So this is that variable. The difference is that this guy is associated with a key down event. But we should be creating an event when we here we don't need this login anonymously button. Or that auth data for right now. We know this is coming in correct because we can create stuff. Is it because this is outside of the div? I can't imagine that's the case either. Click it, it's going to go down to register. We'll create the user with the email and the password. And we're emptying those two things, and those should be bound to those two models. Actually, it shouldn't matter what I type in here, actually. Well, that definitely should not have gotten created, but why isn't it disappearing? I assume if I delete that myself, it goes back. That was weird. Okay. So I think that does tell us It has to do with the difference between a register event and a typing event. So we should be able to wait for them to hit enter on password field just to prove that it'll work. So we should be able to call key down on this guy. Okay. And then add message down here took a single parameter. Then we just need to ask the question about which key was being pressed. Okay, so now it's not going to be on a button pressed. It's actually going to be associated with this text field. So as we're typing stuff into that text field, this guy will fire, but we're only going to register if it was an enter and we actually have something in the password box. And we'll create the thing, empty out our username and password. Actually, I want to do this here real quick. This callback function is where I was doing it before. Let's may have actually been I was just doing it in the wrong place before. So I was doing it inside of this callback function where we may not have had access to the scope. Yeah. But now I'm interested in the button. Take this back out. So now I can not empty it there. That's inside the callback, but I can do it outside of this. And I think it should still zero it out now. No, only on an event. Interesting. I don't know why that's not registering. Wonder, are we limited to so many user accounts on a non-paid account?
How many do you have? Just like 4 or whatever? 5?
5 accounts?
I can't imagine it's limited to 5.
I wouldn't think so either. Let's try a completely different. I wonder if it's like blocking. It's like an attack with too many at the same domain. Okay, let's try add an account here. Okay. Not that I know of. Because I just added this user 2 on the current page.
I wonder if that is it changing it to nothing?
Not till after the fact. I mean, I can comment out those things. So it's not working anyways. When it's a button click, it'll work on key pressed. Seems weird actually. Oh, this is still on ng key down, so it wouldn't have done that. Ay, ay, ay. This is an ng click, right? Okay, so that worked. It clears it out. So it is where I had it before. It was a scope problem. And then it seemed like it wasn't working because I wasn't ever calling the function. Because I was doing it on key pressed, where key presses are things with buttons. Okay, so it seems like that is user authentication for a registration perspective. And then let's look at logging users in. So we already have, so this is auth with password. So we should be able to just steal all that. And I should be able to do this. And we'll create another function here. Scope.login is equal to function, all that stuff. Alright, except we don't want it to be a hard-coded username and password. Instead, we want to say scope.username and scope.password. Okay. And then what we should do is, do we have a seems like it should work. LB ng model equals response. Oh, label's not going to let me do that. Oh, we actually will. Take this down a line. And this is what? Two things like that? Are the placeholders? Yeah. Oh, except am I going to be able to... I can definitely do it with an input box. I don't know if that's going to work or not. Just randomly putting scope.answer in there. Alright, so for the login, I'm using the username and password boxes for authentication. And I'm hoping to fill in that scope.answer thing up there with woot. If that doesn't work, we can definitely do it with an input thing. In fact, just for the sake of time, let's just do it with an input thing. I'm going to say answer, type as text. Okay. So we should be able to say scope.answer is equal to woot. Alright, so we'll register an account. We should be able to test this up here as well. So successfully created an account. Actually, no. Registered. That. Okay, let's run this. So we're going to register an account. Don't I have a login button? I thought I gave it a login button. Or I did. I just wrote the function. So function's called login. We have a button just like this button. So this guy's going to call the login function. This is going to be called login. Okay, so let's try to register an account first. We'll say user5 add ABC123 register. I didn't spit anything else out here, but I think that's for that same reason, the scope reason. And then this is going to be user5 at Oh, it finally said I registered.
Once you started typing.
Oh, yeah, that's probably that. That's, I don't know what that is. That's interesting. All right, so that means I just get to, if I just type something in here, it should tell me whether I logged in successfully. There we go. So it eventually just reminds me. Okay. All right, so now for homework, now that we have authentication working, what we want to do, sticking with our DVD model. So last week's homework was to we show a list of the DVDs with some information about genre and that kind of stuff. All right, so we want to expand upon that now, where you are allowed to have multiple users, and each user has their own collection of DVDs. Okay, so maybe each user has 3 or 4 DVDs, something like that. So now what you'll do is you'll log in first, and then after you log in, it should show that user's collection of DVDs. Log out, log back in as a different user, it should show you their collection of DVDs. You should also have a form for adding DVDs to your collection. Did we have that last time, or were we just doing it all through the MongoDB database?
Well, we had the J.
Okay, so now we should do it with Firebase. So we should be adding DVDs to your your model with Firebase with some form, but it will add them based on the person who's currently logged in, and it should show their collection. When you log in with a different user, it should show their collection, and when you add stuff, it should save it based on that. You don't have to be able to remove stuff or anything like that. Make sense? All right, I'll see everybody next week.